Hello everyone, this is Shadow. Due to copyright restrictions on YouTube, I can't publish many of the audiobooks you love. That's why I've created a special paid service where you can enjoy over 300 high-quality audiobooks from platforms like Webnovel, Pocket FM, Audible, Wuxia, and more. Each novel comes as a one-time purchase, no subscriptions, no hidden fees. After payment, you'll receive full access via Telegram, along with all future updates for that novel. You'll find a wide selection of your favorite genres and titles, always in premium audio quality. Check the full list of available novels in the description. DM me now to get your favorite stories in audiobook form and start listening today. Also, you can request any novel so I can turn into audiobooks. Check out our Patreon for more details.
81, Chapter 81, When the Dead Marched. The cold wind sliced across the fields like a living thing, carrying with it the chill stench of rot. Snow crunched beneath thousands of boots. The air trembled with tension, and when the horns blew from Frostshield's walls, the army of Narnia surged forward, a tide of steel, stone, and unyielding will. But the first to move was Brandon Stark. Brandon roared as he sprinted down the slope, a war cry so loud it shook the stomachs of the men behind him. For Narnia! His cry echoed through the ranks like a spark thrown into oil. The Narnian line exploded into motion. He carried no shield, only a heavy axe carved with runes that glowed faintly, a gift from Harry. Brandon swung the axe with savage force, and the first undead creature, a shriveled corpse with blue-lit eyes, fell with its skull split in half. But for everyone that fell, 5 more crawled over its twitching body. Their screeching rattled even the bravest hearts. Disgusting, Brandon muttered, and he buried his axe in another wraith's neck. Before he could swing again, another figure danced past him, light-footed, impossibly graceful. Oberyn Martell. The Dornish prince spun like a desert storm, his obsidian-tipped spear slicing through undead flesh as if they were made of wet parchment. He moved too fast for eyes to follow, stabbing, twisting, sweeping, piercing. Every strike dropped another enemy, and yet the undead kept coming. Careful, Stark, Oberyn called as he ducked beneath a clawed hand. If you keep hacking your axe like an angry goat, you'll tire before they do. Brandon barked a humorless laugh. Shut up and stab, Dornishman. Oh, I am stabbing, Oberyn smirked and skewered 3 wraiths in a single fluid spin. Behind them, a wave of silver armor flashed under the pale light. Lyanna Stark entered the battle. Her direwolf helm gleamed, her enchanted cuirass, made by Harry with magic no mortal could replicate, shimmered with faint runic light. She wielded a sword of Valyrian steel in one hand, and an obsidian dagger in the other. Her wolf, Helga, ran beside her, snarling with a voice that froze marrow. Lyanna moved through the battlefield like a storm-given flesh. She cut down a wight, stepped forward, decapitated another, then plunged her dagger into a third that tried to claw its way toward her wolf. She was elegance and brutality woven together. She did not hesitate. She did not falter. She did not fear. Mother of dragons. Oberyn whispered under his breath, briefly forgetting he was supposed to be fighting. No wonder the king of Narnia married her. A wight lunged at him, snapping its frozen teeth. He skewered it through the jaw without even looking. But then the earth shook. The ground trembled like something massive had awakened beneath it. A shadow passed overhead. No, not one shadow. Many. And then the giants arrived. One was the first, towering nearly 18 feet tall, his fur cloak whipping behind him like the banner of an ancient god. His voice bellowed over the field. Barrow them, crush them. The giants charged, each step shaking the snow-covered earth. Their weapons, enormous hammers, tree-sized clubs, boulders gripped like pebbles, came down with earth-shattering force. Entire clusters of undead burst apart beneath their strikes. A giant swung a mammoth bone club and shattered 20 wights in a single swing, sending limbs flying through the frozen air. The mammoths thundered beside them, tusks impaling rows of undead as if plowing a field of brittle ice. Oberyn froze for a heartbeat, staring at the spectacle. Gods, he whispered, if these ever marched south. Lyanna cleaved a white inches from his face. They won't, she said firmly. Oberyn nodded, breathless. And then the second wave of the enemy arrived. More wraiths, hundreds. Their pale blue eyes glowed in unison. A cold mist rolled behind them, unnatural, terrifying, alive. Lyanna raised her sword, shouting, "Archers, fire!" A volley of black-tipped arrows rained from the ridges at Frostshield. When the arrows struck the undead mist, the wraiths shrieked as obsidian pierced them. Some collapsed instantly, others stumbled. The mist twisted violently, recoiling as if burned. Brandon hacked down another corpse, panting, "Sister, there are too many." "Yes," Lyanna answered, parrying a claw that would have taken her head. "But we have giants." As if on cue, a giant slammed both fists into the ground. The impact cracked the frozen soil and sent a shockwave that threw an entire row of wraiths into the air. Helga leapt over the broken bodies, tearing into their throats with savage strength. Oberyn wiped sweat off his brow, exhilarated. "This is madness," he muttered. "Beautiful madness." Brandon laughed, wild and fearless. "Welcome to Narnia, Martell." But then, a scream cut through the battlefield. One of the Narnian frontline fighters was dragged under a mound of corpses, his obsidian spear falling from his grasp. Lyanna reacted instantly. She vaulted over a fallen mammoth bone, slid across the ice, and drove her dagger down with perfect precision. The undead shrieked and fell still. Lyanna grabbed the wounded soldier's arm, pulling him up. "Back to the healers. Go." "Yes, my queen." Oberyn's chest tightened. His respect for her turned into something close to awe. She moved like a warrior born in the heart of war. She led like a commander forged in battles. She inspired like someone truly chosen by destiny. And above them all, the giants roared again, louder, angrier, more determined. The battle raged, steel against ice, flesh against the dead. Snow turned black with ash and red with blood. The battle raged like a storm that refused to die. Snow and ash swirled together in the wind. The screams of the whites mixed with the bellowing roars of giants and the fierce cries of Narnians. Every heartbeat was a clash of obsidian against rotting bone. Lyanna drove her sword through another white skull, twisting free just as Brandon split a corpse beside her. Helga tore down another with brutal grace. Then Joran burst through the chaos, panting, blood streaked across his cheek. "Lyanna!" he shouted over the roar of battle. "Another force approaches, from the east." Lyanna spun toward him, eyes narrowing. "How many?" 200 at least. Maybe more. "They move fast, too fast. They will reach the walls in minutes." A curse slipped from her lips. "They're testing us," she muttered. "This is no true assault. They're probing our defenses, learning our limits. They must now know Harry's enchantments still protect Frost Shield." She wiped her blade clean, gaze sharp as ice. "If they regroup, they'll attack as one. We cannot allow that." Joran nodded. "What are your orders?" "Take one and half the giants," Lyanna commanded immediately, voice ringing clear. "Take 100 men with you. Crush them before they reach the walls." Joran gave a savage grin. "It will be done." He turned to call out to the giants, but he froze. Lyanna felt the shift in the air, a coldness deeper than winter itself, crawling across the battlefield like a living thing. Every giant stiffened. Every soldier felt the temperature plummet. And then, a shrill, piercing screech cut through the sky. A single rider appeared through the blowing snow, mounted atop a dead horse whose flesh hung like blackened leather. Blue flames burned in the creature's eye sockets. A white walker. The other lifted its long, ice-blue spear, and hurled it at 1-1 with the force of a thunderbolt. The spear screamed through the air, faster than mortal eyes could track. 1-1. Brandon bellowed. Oberyn cursed and leapt aside. The impact came a heartbeat later. Crack. The icy spear struck 1-1 square in the chest. But instead of piercing flesh, the spear shattered. Fragments of shimmering blue ice exploded harmlessly across the snow. The battlefield went silent for a breath. 1-1 looked down at his armor, thick plates of black and silver, etched with runes that glowed faintly blue. The runes Harry carved himself. Lyanna exhaled, relief flooding through her. He had known. Harry had known this would happen. He had known that if a giant fell in battle, the White Walkers would raise it, and a dead giant would mean death for all of them. So he crafted armor infused with magic strong enough to withstand even a Walker's strike. Oberyn breathed out, realizing only now how close they had come to losing the battle. "That armor," he whispered. "Your husband is think about everything." Lyanna didn't take her eyes off the White Walker. "He sees dangers before they arrive. He prepares for enemies we cannot imagine." Helga growled beside her, teeth bared. The White Walker cocked its head, observing the shattered remnants of its own power lying at 1-1's feet. Its icy stare locked onto Lyanna, a chilling recognition passing between them. "They are learning," she murmured. "Just as we are." The Walker let out a sharp cry, raising its sword of frozen death. Behind it, more mist began to swirl. Lyanna stepped forward, pointing her blade toward the creature. "Joran," she barked, never looking away from the Walker. "Go, now, before the second force reaches Frost Shield." 1-1, go with him." The giant snarled, pounding his massive fist against his chest piece, then turned to join Joran, obeying the queen without question. Oberyn stepped up beside Lyanna. "You intend to face that thing?" Lyanna's grip tightened around her sword. "No, I intend to hold it until Joran finishes his task." Brandon positioned himself on her other flank. "Then we do this together, little sister." Lyanna gave him a fierce, proud smile. The White Walker raised its sword. The cold deepened. And as the last of the giants thundered away toward the east, Lyanna Stark, Brandon Stark, Oberyn Martell, and the warriors of Narnia braced themselves against death incarnate. The White Walker stepped forward, frost whispering beneath its feet. The wind itself recoiled from its presence. Its blue eyes burned like cold stars, fixed on Lyanna with ancient hatred. Brandon shifted his grip on his sword. Oberyn spun his spear, obsidian tips glinting like black lightning. Lyanna felt winter press close behind her, fur bristling, a low growl vibrating deep in his throat. "Stay alert," she murmured to the two men at her side. "They move faster than anything alive." The White Walker tilted its head, then it vanished. "Lyanna!" Brandon shouted. She barely ducked in time. The walker's icy blade swept where her neck had been an instant before, the air hissing with killing cold. Lyanna rolled across the snow, came up on one knee, and slashed, her obsidian sword meeting the walker's ice. Crack! Sshhhh. A burst of frost exploded outward, numbing her hand. Brandon charged with a ferocious roar, swinging his heavy blade down with all the strength of a seasoned Stark warrior. The walker did not parry. It simply stepped aside as if Brandon were a child, then backhanded him across the chest. Brandon flew backward. "Brandon!" Lyanna screamed. He hit the snow hard, the breath knocked from him, but not dead. His armor saved him, a steel breastplate reinforced with thin lines of runes Harry had burned into it. Oberyn leapt into the fray next. His spear danced, a blur of motion as graceful as a Prince of Dorne in a duel. "You cold bastard!" he spat. "Try me." The walker turned toward him with eerie fluidity. Oberyn struck first. Chick! The obsidian spear grazed the walker's thigh, and a sliver of icy flesh hissed away like steam. The walker screeched. It moved in a flash, faster than Oberyn expected. Its sword swung in a deadly arc. Clang! Oberyn barely caught it on the haft of his spear, bracing with every muscle in his arms. "I am not dying here," he roared. The walker pressed harder, its strength monstrous. Lyanna sprinted toward them, but the walker kicked Oberyn away, sending him skidding across the snow. It raised its sword to finish him, and Helga struck. The dire wolf lunged with a snarl, jaws clamping down on the walker's arm. Frost crackled along Helga's teeth, but the massive wolf held on, dragging the ancient creature off balance. "Now!" Lyanna shouted. Brandon was already moving. "With you." Oberyn picked himself up, fury blazing in his eyes. "Let's end this." The three charged as one. The walker stabbed Helga in the flank, the wolf yelped but didn't release its grip, and Lyanna struck first, her obsidian blade slicing across the walker's ribs. A crack split its torso, glowing blue light leaking from the wound. Brandon followed with a crushing downward strike. The walker staggered. Oberyn spun his spear in a vicious arc and drove it straight through the walker's back and out its chest. For the first time, the creature screamed. Blue light burst from its eyes and mouth. The frost around it shattered, and the walker exploded into a shower of ice crystals. For a moment, the battlefield froze in silence. Then, all around them, half the wights collapsed. Their bodies fell like puppets with cut strings, dropping in heaps of bone and rotted flesh. But the rest kept moving. Lyanna wiped frost from her face. "There's another," she said, breathless. "Controlling them." Brandon nodded grimly. "A second walker nearby." Oberyn planted his spear in the ground and leaned on it, panting. "7 hells, how many of them exist?" Lyanna looked out over the snowy horizon, where the undead still swarmed. "Enough to drown us if we don't fight smart," she said. Then louder, to every Narnian within hearing distance, "Listen. The one we killed was not their commander. Another walker hides close, controlling those that remain." The soldiers murmured in fear. Lyanna lifted her sword high. "We find him," she said. "We kill him, and this battle ends." Helga pawed the ground, injured and weak, sensing his queen's determination. Brandon stepped beside her. "Let's kill that bastard." Oberyn grinned despite the terror still in his eyes. "After today, I refuse to die without seeing how this story ends." Lyanna nodded once, steel in her voice. "Spread out, search. The walker is somewhere nearby, and we will end him before sunset." Join me on Patreon if you want to request a novel, link in the description. 82 Chapter 82 They adapted. The eastern flank burned with violence. Snow burst upward in clouds as Joran led the giants downhill, their thunderous strides shaking the frozen earth. Each step sent ripples through the ground, each breath from their lungs rolled like distant thunder. The eastern ridge had been chosen carefully, wide enough for the giants to maneuver, narrow enough to bottle the undead advance. "For Frost Shield!" Joran roared. One answered with a bellow that split the air. The giants hit the undead line like a falling mountain. Clubs the size of siege towers smashed downward. Mammoth bone hammers exploded clusters of wights into shards of ice and bone. Entire ranks were flattened in seconds, their frozen bodies bursting apart beneath the sheer weight of impact. The mammoths charged next. Their tusks skewered rows of undead, flinging broken bodies aside as if plowing rotten soil. Their armored heads struck with relentless pace, trampling the fallen under tons of muscle and iron. For a moment, just a moment, it looked like annihilation. Joran allowed himself half a breath of relief. Then he saw it. "Hold!" he shouted. Hold the line. Too late. The whites didn't retreat. They reformed. The crushed bodies beneath the giant's feet began to move again. Broken limbs crawled. Shattered torsos pulled themselves together. Frozen hands clawed up mammoth legs, climbing, biting, tearing. Gods damn them. Joran cursed. A giant held in anger as a dozen whites swarmed his legs. He stamped, shaking them loose, but more replaced them instantly. Then something else moved in the storm. The temperature plunged. Not from weather, from presence. A scream rose from the undead ranks, not a mindless cry, but a command. High, sharp, intelligent. The whites responded instantly. They stopped charging. They spread out. Joran's heart sank. They're being directed, he realized. Archers. He shouted to the men below. Now. Dragonglass arrows flew, black streaks ripping through the blizzard. Whites fell in dozens, but the survivors repositioned with unnatural precision, clearing space. And then, the snow split open. A massive shape burst upward beneath one of the giants. Ice exploded in a jagged arc as something tremendous tore free from the ground. The giant screamed, not in pain, in shock. A reanimated mammoth rose from the snow, its flesh frozen black, eyes burning blue. Entire plates of ice armored its skull and spine. Tusked caps of jagged ice gleamed like blades. The undead mammoth rammed the giant. 15 tons of death slammed into living flesh. The giant staggered backward, bellowing, barely staying on his feet. Down, back. Joran yelled. Separate them. 1-1 roared and charged the undead behemoth, slamming his massive club down with all his strength. The impact cracked ice but did not shatter it. The mammoth answered with a shriek and swung its head, its frozen tusks ripping across 1-1's armored thigh. The armor held but the force still hurled 1-1 sideways. The giants froze. Mammoths, undead mammoths. This was not a probing force. This was escalation. Joran felt cold crawl into his bones. The undead mammoth reared up, trumpeting in a sound that hurt the ears. The remaining whites surged around it again, moving in disciplined waves. Joran clenched his jaw and raised his sword. Giants! He roared. Do not let them turn your dead into weapons. If one of you falls, burn the body. Hear me? Burn it. The giants answered with furious shouts. 1-1 dragged himself to his feet, blood steaming against the snow. He locked eyes with the undead mammoth, ancient fury meeting ancient death. He charged again. Joran swallowed hard. If this flank broke, Frostshield would be surrounded. And somewhere out there, the walker commanding this monstrosity was watching, waiting. Joran felt at first a wrongness underfoot. Not the tremble of marching giants. Not the impact of falling bodies. This was subtler. A whisper through the ice, like something moving beneath the snow. He turned, opening his mouth to shout a warning. And the earth split. Frozen soil cracked open across the battlefield in jagged lines. The snow collapsed inward as if swallowed, and from beneath the surface, hands clawed upward. Whites erupted from the ground. They burst forth in every direction, behind the giants, beneath the infantry lines, inside the archer formations. Ice shattered as corpses pulled themselves free, hidden for days, maybe weeks, sealed beneath the battlefield by White Walker sorcery. Ambush! Joran roared. The ground. Too late. A Narnian spearman was pulled screaming into the earth, his body vanishing under a surge of blue-lit claws. Another was dragged down by the legs, his helmet bouncing uselessly across the ice. From the eastern flank to the center of the field, the dead rose everywhere at once. The White Walkers had not attacked like usual. They had planned. Hidden Walker stepped into view through the storm, pale figures emerging from ridgelines, from snowbanks, from behind frozen wreckage. His eyes burned with cold, calculating intelligence as they lifted their weapons. It raised its hand, and the buried dead responded. White surged upward in disciplined waves, striking with perfect coordination, grabbing ankles, dragging warriors down, swarming giants' legs in numbers too great to shake loose. Giants, back! 1-1 bellowed. A monstrous arm reached up, gripping a giant's calf. Then another, then many. The giant howled as the dead began climbing him like vermin, hacking, biting, clawing at joints and exposed flesh. He stamped, smashed, roared, but they did not stop. One dragged itself up his back. Another shoved an obsidian blade away from its chest, sacrificing its own arm to clear a path. Joran felt fear sink its claws into his gut. The undead mammoth trumpeted again, answering a silent command. It lunged forward, smashing through a line of Narnians already overwhelmed by the rising dead. A giant fell. The impact shook the battlefield, and the White Walkers did not hesitate. The fallen giant twitched. Its blood froze mid-flow. Its eyes snapped open, burning blue. No, no. Joran screamed. Burn it, burn. Too late. The dead giant rose. Snow fell from its shoulders as it stood, towering and terrible, a weapon reborn against its own kind. The White Walker who commanded it raised both arms, a puppet master pulling strings, and the monster turned toward the living giants. 1-1 froze. For the first time, genuine fear crossed the giant leader's face. They adapted, he rumbled. They adapted too much. Across the field, the Narnians fought desperately. Obsidian weapons flashed, shattering wights left and right, but the numbers were crushing. 5 rows for every one destroyed. The ground itself became an enemy, swallowing bodies, hiding death beneath ice and snow. Arrows fell short, orders were drowned by screams. And above it all, the White Walker watched. Patient, cold, triumphant. Joran staggered back, slipping on frozen blood. They cannot win this way, not like this. This was no longer a battle of strength. The horn call came too late for warning and too early for hope. Joran heard it through the chaos, a long, sharp note cutting through screams and the thunder of giant footsteps. At first, he thought it was another signal of retreat, another doomed command swallowed by battle. Then the wind shifted, and from the western rise, Queen Lyanna came. She did not charge blindly. She struck like a blade slipped between ribs. Her force emerged from the storm in perfect formation, skin changers flanking wide, archers already loosing obsidian-tipped arrows, infantry moving in tight wedges. Helga burst ahead of her like a living shadow, her howl ripping through the undead ranks. The White Walkers had not expected it. Their focus had been forward, on the giants, on Frostshield's gates, on turning death into momentum. Their rear guard was thin, almost careless. It was a mistake. For Narnia. Lyanna's voice rang out, clear and terrible. Her warriors slammed into the exposed flank of the undead with ruthless efficiency. Obsidian blades shattered frozen spines. Arrows took out White's mid-command, dropping them before they could even turn. Joran felt the pressure around him ease. The Queen. He roared. Hold the line. 1-1 bellowed in answer, ripping a dead mammoth's head sideways with a strength that cracked ice like glass. Living giants rallied, smashing into their undead kin with renewed fury. The battlefield shifted. Snow sprayed as Lyanna cut her way toward the heart of the enemy force. Her armor glowed softly with Harry's runes, deflecting claws and blades alike. She moved without hesitation, slide, strike, pivot, always advancing. Brandon fought at her side, bleeding but unbowed, hacking down anything foolish enough to bar their path. East flank stabilized. Joran shouted hoarsely as she reached him. For now, Lyanna answered. Her eyes were already searching. Where is the walker? Joran pointed with his blade. Behind the ridge. He stayed back, commanding. Lyanna nodded once. Then that ends now. They surged forward again. The White Walker stood apart from the chaos, pale and unmoving, its blue eyes tracking every shift of battle. Ice curled lightly around its feet, the ground obeying its presence. The moment it saw Lyanna advancing, it raised one hand. The fallen whites twitched. Frozen corpses tried to rise again. And then Oberyn Martell broke from the flank. He ran straight at the walker, smiling. 7 hells, Brandon muttered. He's mad. Oberyn spun his spear once, weirwood shaft humming, obsidian blades catching the pale light, and hurled himself forward like a viper. The White Walker reacted instantly. It lunged. Its sword of ice clashed against Oberyn's spear in a shriek of frost and stone. The impact sent both sliding across the snow. Oberyn laughed as he rolled, coming up on one knee. You're fast, he admitted. But so am I. The walker struck twice more, precision incarnate. Oberyn danced between the blows, spear flashing, obsidian carving shallow wounds along frozen flesh. Blue light leaked. The walker hissed. It raised its free hand, and the ice beneath Oberyn fractured, cracking open in jagged lines. Oberyn fell. The spear slipped from his grip. For a heartbeat, death stood ready. Then Lyanna hurled her dagger. The obsidian blade struck the walker's wrist, breaking its focus. Ice shattered. The ground stilled. Oberyn! Lyanna shouted. Oberyn didn't look back. He surged upward, caught his spear mid-fall, and drove obsidian point forward, straight through the walker's chest. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the walker screamed. Not like any living thing. Its body fractured, cracked spider webbing outward, blue light pouring from every seam. Oberyn twisted the spear and kicked free as the walker exploded into shards of ice. Silence followed. Then, all around them, whites collapsed. The undead army fell instantly, dropping where they stood, arms slack, weapons clattering, bodies lifeless once more. Oberyn planted his spear in the snow and leaned on it, chest heaving. Next time, he said between breaths, I demand easier opponents. Lyanna let out a short laugh, the first on the battlefield. You did well, Dornish prince. Brandon clapped Oberyn on the shoulder. Very well. Jorand approached, eyes shining with relief. If you'd arrived moments later. Lyanna cut him off. But we didn't. She looked across the field, at the fallen giants, the wounded Narnians, the scorched ice. This war isn't over, she said quietly. But today, we live. The battlefield grew quiet in the way only death could make it quiet. The wind still moved, whispering across broken ice and trampled snow, but the clash of steel was gone. What remained were bodies, too many of them, lying where they had fallen beneath a sky the color of old iron. Lioness stood with her helm removed, her gloved hand resting on the direwolf's neck. The beast was streaked with frost and blood, his breath coming out in heavy clouds, but he stood alert, ears flicking at every sound. Beyond him, the Narnians were already moving, not celebrating, not boasting, only working. They always worked after battle. The fallen were gathered first. Men and women moved through the snow in pairs, lifting bodies with the care one might give a sleeping child. Even the dead giants were honored, too massive to move whole, they were laid where they fell. Within minutes Narnian soldiers were reduced to ash. When it was done, Lioness stood amid the aftermath, breathing hard, blood frozen along her blade. Jorund approached, helm tucked beneath his arm. His face was streaked with soot and frozen tears. 478 dead, over 100 wounded, 3 giants. Lioness closed her eyes at that. Even with Harry's armor, even with enchantments, giants still fell. She exhaled slowly. Mark every name, every clan, every family. They'll be remembered, Jorund said, voice rough. As they should be. The burial fires burned only briefly. Narnian rites did not favor flame, but against the cold ones, some bodies could not be left whole. Whites could rise again if not destroyed properly. Dead bodies burned until nothing remained but blackened bone. At the edge of the encampment, a shaman leaned on his staff and whispered, Odin take their strength, Frigga take their pain, may winter guard them, not claim them. Lioness stepped forward when the final name was spoken. She did not speak loudly. They died so others might live, she said, voice carrying across the snow. Frostshield still stands, Telmar still stands, and Frostfang yet breathes. A murmur rippled through the warriors. Lioness' gaze hardened. We do not stop. Within the hour, the army was moving again. Not the full host, too many wounded remained, but a fast-moving column formed under Jorund's command. Sleds were loaded with food, furs, dragonglass weapons, and medicine. Giants volunteered without hesitation, shouldering supplies with massive hands. Oberyn watched as men and women stepped forward eagerly, despite blood still crusted on their armor. You don't even know who you'll face, he said to a young archer stringing his bow. The archer smiled faintly. We know. That answer disturbed him more than any war cry. Lioness rode at the head once more, eyes scanning the horizon. Helga paced beside her, while half a dozen skin changers slipped quietly into animal forms and vanished ahead, wolves, ravens, catamounts, eyes and ears stretching into the white. They're still out there, Brandon said grimly, riding close. Not all of them were here. I know, Lioness replied. The cold doesn't retreat forever, it only waits. One of the skin changers returned swiftly, breath fogging in human form. Tracks ahead, old magic. The ice itself hides them. Oberyn stiffened. An ambush. Possibly, Lioness said. She turned to the troops. Stay close. No stragglers. If the snow moves, cut it. If the ice whispers, burn it. A murmur of acknowledgement followed. As they marched deeper toward Frostfang, the land itself seemed to watch them. Snowdrifts shifted unnaturally. Shadows lingered too long behind ice-crusted stones. Somewhere far away, a horn sounded, too distant to hear clearly, but enough to make Helga growl low in her throat. Oberyn tightened his grip on his spear. He had thought the worst was over. He understood now that it had only begun. Join me on Patreon if you want to request a novel, link in the description.
Hello everyone, this is Shadow. Due to copyright restrictions on YouTube, I can't publish many of the audiobooks you love. That's why I've created a special paid service where you can enjoy over 300 high-quality audiobooks from platforms like Webnovel, Pocket FM, Audible, Wuxia, and more. Each novel comes as a one-time purchase, no subscriptions, no hidden fees. After payment, you'll receive full access via Telegram, along with all future updates for that novel. You'll find a wide selection of your favorite genres and titles, always in premium audio quality. Check the full list of available novels in the description. DM me now to get your favorite stories in audiobook form and start listening today. Also, you can request any novel so I can turn into audiobooks. Check out our Patreon for more details.